do you expect or have a precaution about in terms of the Security Council resolution?
First of all, the US is proposing this resolution that endorses the Trump 20-point plan and establishes a so-called Board of Peace. Those who are on the Board of Peace include the US as well as a number of other states, all of whom have breached their duties vis-a-vis the Palestinian people and haven't abided by their international legal obligations. The United States of America itself being complicit in this genocide, if not a direct participant in the genocide. So to create a board of peace by the people who have killed those same people seems like a joke. So they are proposing that this board of peace be given an international legal personality and also be in coordination with the illegal occupier of Palestine, and that is Israel. They're also, under this Board of Peace, they are seeking to create a civil body to oversee the day-to-day operations in Palestine. Now this is being referred to as the CMSCC, and there is a lot of discussion among investors as well as other states around it, as you would see from the coverage of, for example, Politico. This body will oversee everything, including immigration, reconstruction, humanitarian efforts, and public services. What we've seen so far is that within its structure, it really reminds us of the same mechanisms that put the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, that is responsible for the killing of over 2,000 Palestinians and has given us the symbol of flour mixed in with blood. So, and the civil body is seeking to engage with Palestinian so-called technocrats, and those are more or less elite Palestinians who have been chosen to be worthy of the trust of those nations. So the civil body is really reminiscent of the Coalition Provisional Authority in Iraq. It is one that seeks to oversee everything around this. And furthermore, it will build also on reconstruction premised on loans from the World Bank, thereby putting the Palestinians, instead of them getting reparations as per international law, what they will be getting is debt bondage. Last but not least is the International Stabilisation Force, in collaboration with both Egypt and Israel. And this stabilization force seeks to also work and organize a police that is formed from local trusted people. What we've heard so far also is that Abu Shabab, who is a notorious war criminal in Gaza and who has collaborated with Israel in committing a good part of its war crimes internally and has caused a lot of fracture among the Palestinians, is the person that Kushner is meeting to lead this so-called police force. This stabilization force will get to decide who is a terrorist and who is not, who will get food and who will not. So we are in effect, what we are doing, what this resolution will do, is to normalize a completely illegal situation. Israel is an illegal occupier in Palestine as per the International Court of Justice's decision, and the UNRWA is the humanitarian body that ought to be in charge of the humanitarian discourse in Gaza. None of this is mentioned, none of the crimes are mentioned, and furthermore, under international law, an occupation is controlled by a hostile army, and it lacks completely, in this case, Palestinian representation or Palestinian consent. And even if we are to say that Hamas accepted the peace plan, Hamas is an armed militia. It gets to accept things in relation to its armed discourse. It doesn't get to accept things in relation to the Palestinian right of self-determination.
Does occupation become legal if it's approved by the Security Council?
That is a question that lies at the heart of the contradictions of this system, because everything that the US is proposing is blatantly illegal. Like, you cannot come and enforce a foreign body of organization and a foreign military of organization on a people who blatantly say no. Every single person in Gaza, if asked about their answer, except of course for Abu Shabab's militias, would say blatantly, absolutely no. We are enough humans to run ourselves. So, and the right of self-determination is a jus cogens norm. It's a preemptory norm of international law. Endless amount of international court of justice decisions on this. So when the UN Security Council acts in complete violation and overlooking basic premises of international legal order, we create a core contradiction in the system that almost is, and this is what I've heard from some diplomats, what the US is trying to do here is really touching at the core of the system. However, it's not the first time the US does this. It did this with Iraq, and that is the complete politicization of this legal system, and where it sought to normalize an illegal occupation of Iraq through UN Security Council mechanisms. So will this mean that the occupation, and in this case, it would mean that the US would become the direct occupier of Gaza? Would this make it legal? Well, that would open up a can of worms for international lawyers to feed on. And that is simply the dismay and the destruction of the whole international legal system. Some would tell you the superiority of the UN Security Council, and those are the people who uphold what we call a rules-based order. To them, this contradiction doesn't matter because the status quo is what matters. Others who uphold public international law as we know it would tell you that the contradiction is too heavy to bear and we should still maintain those rules. In conclusion, what I would say is A does not negate B. Even if the UN Security Council resolution passes, no one could come and say that the Palestinians' right to rule themselves by themselves is now negated, or that coercion has been normalized. It would just simply trigger a crisis that will really feed into generations going forward within the whole of the discipline, rendering it a complete mockery.
Which is effectively takes us to Iraq, but also takes us 100 years back. I mean, I come from Syria, and Syria was put under a mandate, quote unquote, of an occupying power. So was Palestine as well at the time by the legal body of the time, the League of Nations. So it is not a new thing where occupation is justified by the existing system and by the desire, as you say, to sustain the status quo. I just have a quick question. Is that Board for Peace, is it the one that will have Tony Blair?
I believe so. And it's hilarious because this feels like such a bad nightmare and also not just that, a bad Disney remake of the same Iraq story. And it's such a bad director that they even, didn't bother to change the character and brought in the same, because, Tony Blair has been such a great asset to humanity that we needed to revive his legacy in a context of genocide.
So there was an interview on a British channel, and they asked why Tony Blair, and a brilliant woman says, "Well, maybe the devil was occupied." What should humanitarian aid organizations who welcome the ceasefire, and I understand that no one wants the industrial scale killing to continue day on day. What is their next step? What would they be doing now to fulfill their function, which is to deliver aid as well as they can, but also to not do harm by normalizing the continuation of this, low burn genocide that you've mentioned? What should we ask them to do?
For everyone working in good consciousness in this field, and I presume people who enter this field enter with the purpose and with the need to uphold those standards of treating everyone equally. One of the main problems that we have with humanitarian work is that we zoom in rather than zoom out. And this is a context where I would say that dignified humanitarian work requires talking about something that we usually don't talk about, which is self-determination. Humanitarian organizations need to condition their engagement as well as push in their advocacy. We all know that humanitarian organizations have a sound and they are well respected also among a lot of parliamentary representatives, diplomatic representatives. And by speaking out against the stabilization force, by speaking out against this plan and seeking to unify a position where the humanitarian organizations refuse to engage and enact and with this context in a situation that constitutes a direct violation of self-determination. Otherwise, what we are doing, and here there's been a lot of critique, for example, for the position of the ICRC in this case, is just normalizing a very illegal situation. And I agree that there is a level of pragmatism that is needed, but COGAT and Israel are not really in a position to answer a unified space that says that we must uphold international law. And as you noted, if we allow international law to be completely mocked in this case, what are we to say about the future? Where are we to look at when it comes to other places? Well, especially now that the whole world is changing. Would we have allowed ourselves to uphold such a low standard if this was France that we are speaking about, or if this was Canada, or if these were Canadian people that we are engaging with? Would we have said that, yes, it's absolutely fine to shake hands with their occupiers and allow a plan that mass subjugates those people? Or do we actually note that in order to undertake our work, we need to uphold this very simple doctrine that is at the core of the system? We need to expand our understanding beyond the rules of IHL into the rules of self-determination. And let's be very clear, the main reason that the lens of humanitarian organizations is this narrow is not because it's the demand of justice, but it's the demand of politics across time and across history. And we need to keep that very clear. And there's a very thin line when we are normalizing domination and when we are supporting those who are under it to conceive of their dignity and self-determination. And we need to understand that our approach must be holistic to that sense, and also a unified position is one that is most important. Perhaps people have become too comfortable in their chairs in a commercialized comprehension of what humanitarianism would do, only if it aligns with what states and dominating powers would let us do. And we are in front, really, an existential crisis that should be, and everyone should be asking themselves, what are the values that I want to uphold? Why did I enter this field? And the more we have people who are asking these questions, the more we are likely to form a unified opinion that upholds something very basic, lessons from humanity that came from colonization, that really, if we are unable to see them, we will really pave a way for a much darker future.